you can go on the website and go to the link at pay.faithinmovement.com and pre-order the book, Battle or Bread, There is a Treasure in You, that starts giving some very practical, livable tips. So what this book started out as, it was supposed to be a practical living manual, quote unquote. And at the time, it kind of shifted. So it not only does the practical, livable manual aspect, it then now starts getting into some introspective look as to bits and pieces of my life and how those areas are transformed and are being transformed.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you for tapping into another episode of the Mindful Moneymakers, where we give you all the tips, tricks, and mindset shifts you need to make if you want to live by design instead of by default. Today, we're talking with another wonderful spirit, another wonderful soul, a leader in the entrepreneurial space who's going to share her time, her life, and her experience with you. I'm super excited to introduce you to Dr. Fisher-Hickman, who is a multifaceted individual who embodies various roles, including a widow and bonus mother. As a thought leader in pro-marital confident coaching, she brings innovative perspectives as an educator and a public historian. A faithpreneur dedicated to facilitating growth, learning, and expansion. Dr. Fisher-Hickman is an emerging thriver, no longer content with mere survival. She's purposely designed to lead others to their own growth journeys. Thank you for speaking with us today, Dr. Fisher-Hickman. How are you?
I'm well. Good evening. Good evening on the East Coast. So out there where you are, it's good afternoon. So hey, how y'all doing?
Feeling good, feeling great. I've been looking forward to this conversation, and I was able to briefly introduce you, but I want to give you an opportunity to kind of tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did you come about as a bonus mother, a widow, and all of the things, the beautiful things? How'd you get started? Where are you now, and where are we headed?
Oh, that's a lot. Let's see if I can remember all of these different things. So I'll start with being the wife and the bonus mother. So I and my now late husband, unfortunately, when we met, we decided, well, he said that his family, meaning his two children at the time, were the most important things to him. And he didn't believe in stepchildren. So whomever he was going to marry had to accept his kids as their own. So in essence, I came with a marriage and two kids. I had our son, which was Junior. So we called him Little Sean, but he was Sean L. Hickman Jr. And then we also had my daughter, who's an adult now. Woo. Um, and she has birthed us three grandbabies. And before our son was killed, he had a son. So I have four wonderful grandchildren. Unfortunately, as I mentioned before, I am a widow unexpectedly. So that's a whole different space. But so that's how I became a wife, widow now, and a bonus mother. So you asked me where I'm going. So it's navigating this new, I don't want to say new normal because there's nothing normal about being a widow. It is normal. It's okay to be a bonus mom, but navigating this new life without my husband, without my purpose partner, as some of my other friends call their spouses, and where we're going is in these waters. So if we were talking about academic circles, we would say emergent theory. So this is now in the emerging theory of waters dealing with thriving and not just surviving, and moving away from survival tactics and mindsets and behaviors and attitudes and even circles. I'm not saying to let go of the circles, but just shifting them around and putting them in different placements. But now moving into an area where you're supposed to be, which is to thrive. Um, I will say this, I literally walked away from my job, one that I truly enjoyed. I love any and everything all about history, creating projects, speaking with principal investigators, meaning researchers, and those who were going to do the projects. And I'm evaluating and monitoring. I loved all of that, speaking to different people, learning different things. But those of you who are in the faith community, and even if you're not, when you feel that tug, that pull, and it just won't let you go, and you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're like, oh, I need to do such and such, and da 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 da, and you're trying to figure out how to do all of these different things along with the corporate job. It was time. It was time. So Those of us that have wombs, so men, we're not even going to get into all of that, but we're just saying those that have this thing,
Mm.
and it wouldn't let me go. So I literally said, okay, all right, Jesus, I'm going to try you on this thing. And I've tried you before in other waters and other places, but okay, I want to make sure it's you and not just me being, I want to do my own thing kind of deal because I'm a little too old to do silly stuff. But I can tell you when it happened, it was incremental. It wasn't just all fast and furious. It was, okay, Lord, I'm preparing my mind and my body for this. Help me to know how to do this thing. And when I tell you step by step, because I was listening to a little brief meme from the late Dr. Miles Monroe. Those of you who may be familiar with his work, his family still has clips and sermons that he's done years ago, and unfortunately, he's no longer with us. And
Mhm.
he says there are the instances when God gives you a vision, He never tells you step by step.
Mhm.
Because if He did, then actually you wouldn't need God. You would just need an instruction sheet and say, here you go, have
Mhm.
at it. But I can tell you when that whole thing started just formulating and just festering and just ruminating in my spirit and in my womb. I mean, when I say step by step, he said, here, this is what you do now. This is what you do now. Hold off on this. It was just wonderful. So when the day came, I woke up and I was like, oh, well, let's go. Did it, dropped off the equipment, sent out whatever needed to be sent out. Um, and it went to all the persons that needed to know that I was no longer affiliated with whatever. And when I say the rest of the day couldn't have been better orchestrated,
Mhm.
things that I thought I could not do, the Lord had to remind me, you're free now. You can do those things. And in
Mhm.
the process of that freedom, I was able to meet different people. I was able to interact with different people, even prayed over a young lady that was mentioning certain things. And I said, well, come on, let's pray about this. I don't know her from Adam. Breathed life and spoke life into her, created new collaborations, and met people that are going to help me on my rest of my journey. And then got a call that my book is ready to go through proofing, looking at the galleys. And I was just like, look at you, God.
Mhm.
Didn't think of any of this. I was just stuck on, let me do this particular action and wait on him. I mean, it was just like this all day, all day. And even so today, it's just like all day. So this emerging and new journey, I told a friend yesterday, so I have to speak it out loud. This is not just for me.
Mhm.
And most, it should be that when you step out, whatever that stepping out looks like or is, it should not be solely just for you or your family. It is to impact, I'm going to say, billions, the
Mhm.
masses. It is never just for you. Because if that be the case, then I would have done this years ago when I was trying to. And the other aspect is the heart space has to be right.
Mhm.
So when you keep thinking it's you, then I now understand when people used to tell me years ago, you're not ready. And I would go, yes, I am. I have this in place. I have this in place. I'm doing this. I've done this. I have acquired da 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 da. But now I understand it. When it is for the masses
Mhm.
and not just for you, then you start seeing things open up that you couldn't even imagine.
That's so beautiful. And it's really beautiful to, have it happen that way. But I've learned that until you experience it, your words could really hardly do it any justice. For you to take one step forward and God takes two, sometimes three, four steps towards you, you know,
Hmm.
and carries you along. It's just such a beautiful experience, and I'm so happy that you found the courage in your through your challenges to go ahead and press on and press forward and take whatever step you saw available to you and allowed the world to open up to you. I have a question for you.
Sure.
Right. My question is, as your role as a bonus mother and a widow,
Mhm.
how does it influence your approach as a coach and a leader?
It greatly influences. So I'll take the aspect of the bonus mother first, because that is still a rocky road. So I don't want to ever give their impression that this is in La La Land and we're happy go lucky skipping down the yellow brick road. We are not. At one point, it was very hard. Then it got light and it was wonderful. And now it's gone back to being hard.
Mm,
And even though it looks impossible, even though it looks chaotic, there's still something there that it won't let go. So, in the midst of that, and then having been a wife and now a widow, those two particular paths greatly influence how I speak with women who are in marital strife and even men, and then how I assist them. I don't help, I assist them start creating different ways or approaches to handle whatever the strife is, whatever the conflict is. So, one of the things, it's not just conflict, we now have to understand all the different parties that are involved. So, having walked these lines where you're speaking with mothers of children that you did not birth, or family members who have always known the children and now you're intended, and they don't know you, you have to walk in a very fine line. So all of that experience, all of the feeling, and then those private conversations that I would have between my intended, who then became my husband, some of that comes into the play of coaching and working with people, because mindset and understanding heart space is very important. Because at one point in time, if you don't speak up, then we tend to create our own little stories. There's a story that I commonly tell about a very good friend of mine who I had seen for years and years, never knew her, but it was an occasion that I was starting to teach her son. And we had a parent teacher conference. And even though this may not sound like that has anything to do with what you asked, but it does, because it talks about assumption. Sitting in the parent teacher conference, and I am speaking to this woman, and I said, I have to tell you, I created this whole scenario about you. And I have to say this visually. She was a bald, black, brazen woman. Never saw it in my life. So I created a story. And when I finally told her what the story was, she said, "Girl, you are so off." And from that point, we just laughed. But here's the crux of the matter. If I never said anything, I would have kept that scenario, that narrative in my mind, and then would have corresponded with my actions and my attitude towards her dealing with that narrative. When we start doing that and not speaking what we think we see, so someone else has the opportunity to say, oh no, that's not it at all, we continue a destructive path that no one benefits from. So being a wife, now widow, and a bonus mother, and thinking about all of those different things and the narratives and the journeys and the paths and the dips and the falls and the rises, it very much influences how I coach and consult with people, whether it is, um, excuse me, whether my coaching business or the consulting business. So yes, very much so.
That's so beautiful. And what you said about the assumptions, I think is very powerful for anybody listening right now. We create so many stories in our life about other people, but also about ourselves, about our capabilities, about what is possible, what's not possible, what things are. And I think it's important to realize how subjective our experience is, how much of our life is based in perspective, right?
Hmm.
And how you see things and the meanings you attach to things. I think that what you said is tremendously important about communication, allowing, things to be out in the open, in the air. My grandmother always said, secrets keep you sick. And I think that if you had kept this assumption,
Hmm.
about it, especially if it's a negative one, would have caused a sickness or a disconnect between you and her. So I wanted to highlight that. That's very,
Mm-hmm.
extremely profound and important. Now, I'm also curious, because there's so many people living in survival mode, and my whole thing is live by design instead of by default. And we are both here to impact billions of
Yeah.
people. In fact, side note, I put that out there on social media before. And it was like, it's only 8 billion people on Earth, right? You're not going to talk to 8 billion people. And I know, but I can talk to somebody who can talk to somebody. This is a each one, reach one. And then when I
That's right.
collaborate with people like you, right?
Right.
This is team sport. We get to impact billions of people. But for you,
Mm-hmm.
in your life, moving from survival to thrival, what kind of inspired that shift? And what are some of the steps that you took to make that change in your life?
Oh, because I'm still making the shift and I'm still making the steps. So, but one of the things that really had that continually stood out for me, two things. When the actor Chadwick Boseman passed away,
Hmm.
and you looked at his movie bio, all the films and different things that he did, you could actually feel that he did what he was supposed to do in the time that he had. So that was the first one. That really struck me. And from there, I started thinking about the way I was raised and the way I was groomed, whether we're talking about grooming in church, the way I was groomed at home, the way I was groomed in school at various levels: elementary, junior high, high school, college, graduate school. All of those things was an implant of what, not just what people wanted to see, but what it was for me to be able to go, if I'm a child of God and he says he has given me these talents and gifts, and before he knew me, he knew that I would be a prophet, that means I'm to go out and share those things. I started thinking, I said, well, I haven't used half the stuff. I was trained as this. I was trained as that. I was groomed to do this, that, and the other. I've done this. I've done that. But if I died, would I hear well done?
Mm,
And kept thinking about it, and I looked at the fact of my husband was remarkable. He used to tease and say, I'm irresistible, and yes, he was. But the remarkability of him was never fully seen. And I said, I can't have that in my life anymore.
mm,
And it's not to be fully seen because everybody needs to see me. It is to actually make good on that foundation that was given to me.
mhm,
And I said, I'm not the regular Joe Blow.
mhm,
I am I am Sue Fisher's daughter.
mm,
I was Sean Hickman's wife. There's something in that for me. And I said, well, then I can't try to figure out how I'm going to use this leave this day so I can do this day. And I'm too old for all that dip and curve. So let me just go ahead and do it. I'm going to trust God. And when he says, I've given you these things to do and to glorify me, I'm not going to just sit on it. So everything just kept reverberating in my mind. What is in your hand? And the things that you started, those are planted seeds. We need to see them grow.
mm,
And one of the beautiful opportunities that God gave me before my husband passed, and didn't even know that his time was coming short. It was about a couple of weeks before he passed, because he passed unexpectedly. I sat him down and I said, now, babe, all the different things that we've been trying to put together and we talked about and we've written out and we've done this and we've done that, I'm going to do it.
mhm,
And he looked at me, didn't really say a lot, but you could see it in his eyes that he wished that he would be there to see it.
mm,
And I said, if anything happens, I want you to know that this is part of your legacy.
mhm,
What we talked about and put together on paper and had it formalized as a nonprofit and whatever else we did, I said, I want you to know it's gonna come.
Mhm.
and it's going to do what it's supposed to do. And I think if a lot of us start speaking to ourselves that way and being mindful of the decisions that we make and how those decisions affect the folk that are coming behind us,
Mhm.
then we would move in a different fashion. So I'm starting to move in a different fashion. And I said this before, so I'll say it again. I was speaking to a very dear friend of mine yesterday, and I said, you know, this move, this pivotal move, is really not just about me. It is to show my friends who are in their 60s, who I've been telling for years, you should go out and do da 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 the gift, the talent that you have instead of working for somebody else. This is for the person that doesn't believe, even though they see glimpses of what they can do. All of this is not about me. It really is for somebody else. And in the process, it starts speaking to that little girl whose mother said, now when you get on stage to do your little speech at church, don't act a nut, you know, speak clearly, enunciate and pronounce every word, all of your words. It was all of that going in my mind saying, I have to do this, because if I don't, then I shall never talk about it again.
Mhm.
Then that baby that was going to be birthed, I have to be still, and it'll be a stillborn.
Mhm.
And I said, well, I can't have any more stillborns.
Mhm.
Too much was put into me to have a stillborn.
Mhm.
So no. So the steps are still coming, and the mindset every so often has to be shaken up a bit. But it is the foundation that this is not enough.
Mhm.
That's what really prompted all of this.
Mm. Sorry about that.
All of this stuff is just not enough. I want to hear, well done, thy good and faithful servant. So that's
We
what fueled it.
It's solid. Sorry about that. We're gonna cut that out and post.
Sure.
I don't know why it is even ringing, and then it rings on my phone, my computer, my tablet, but everything. Jeez Louise.
Technology, I tell you.
So you want to say that last part again, just to make sure
Oh,
that we got it. You said you want to hear well done.
oh yes. I want when my day is coming to a close or Jesus is already here, I want to hear, well done, thy good and faithful servant. Enter now into my rest. So just living the life that I was ordained to live, not just what someone thinks I should live, the conventional thought, because I did everything by the book. I went to school. Wasn't really socialized to think I was going to get married, but that's a whole nother conversation for another day.
Hmm.
So went to school, played by the rules, got the job or tried to get the jobs, and then something clicked when my very first teaching job, formal teaching job, because I have always been a teacher and a tutor, but that experience pushed something in me, and I remember looking at, and this is in one of my books that will be coming out soon. I remember seeing this guy in my neighborhood, and we used to call him College Boy because we just didn't know his name. But College Boy would come in our community after his stint in jail.
Mm.
And he would have these crowds of young boys, late teens, early 20s, like him, because he was mid 20s. And I called it holding court. So I was sitting in my back porch, and I'm a young girl. I'm under 10. Yeah, under 10. And I would watch him in the alleyway. And in DC,
You'll watch him in the alleyway.
yeah, in DC, the alleys were huge. So I mean, you had parked cars, you had all kinds of stuff in the alley. So he would sit on these little brick walls by the end roadhouse, and I would just watch him. And the guys wouldn't move. So I would just again make up a story as to what he was saying. But this is also now at the pinnacle of the crack epidemic.
Mhm.
And those of you who may remember the drug lords, we had Rayful Edmonds in DC. And I can't say that he worked for him or not, but I know he was doing some illicit stuff.
Mhm.
And I would watch these young men just get off their bikes and just stand for hours, it seemed, just listening to him. So remembering that when I started teaching my first group of kids in DC and ran across a brilliant young man. And at one point, he was doing well. He was coming to class. He was on point. And then all of a sudden, he wasn't in class anymore. And I remember asking a colleague at the time, I said, well, where is so and so? And he was like, that little thug. And I was like, excuse me, that's my student. He is not a thug.
Mhm.
And he said, well, he's in juvie. Well, I went to private school. I don't know what juvie meant. I was like, what are you talking about?
Mhm.
He's a criminal. What are
Mhm.
you talking about? And from there, I had purpose and I said, no other young black boy, it didn't make a difference, any color, ethnicity, was going to fall through the cracks under my watch.
Mhm.
And I started remembering those young men that used to stand in the alleyway and just be enthralled with college boy. And I, at the time when we were, I guess we can call it dating or courting, I told my husband, I said, I got this baby that I need to birth. And he was like, I'm sorry, what? I was like, no, 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 not a,
Mhm.
physical baby. I said, but this is the thing. I need to work with young men. I need to make sure that whatever they are missing, somebody's giving it to them. And at one point I thought it was an after school program. I thought it was this, I thought it was that. And he, one of the many times just listening to me, he said,
Mhm.
well, no, it's none of those things. And when he laid out his vision, and it was really just divine, I said, that's it.
Mhm.
So from that point, it was trying to birth the baby and still be conventional. And I have come to figure out when you have things put into your womb, nothing about you is conventional. So then I started thinking about my conception, the way I was reared, the household I was a part of, the people that I came in contact. Nothing in my life has been conventional.
Mhm.
Nothing. So I said, why are you still trying to fit in this conventional box? Go to work, come home, chill out, go back to work, come home. I was like, oh, that's not who I am anyway.
Mhm.
So it finally dawned on me. It's like, oh, because I tried this when we were in our first years of marriage, and I know it completely terrified my husband to go out on the limb. So we made some missteps financially, trying to get to a particular place where we could do it. Just didn't work out, and of course, um, Black men are pragmatic. They want to know how things are going to happen, and they want to be secure, and I get it. But now I don't have to answer to him. I said I'm gonna step out.
Mhm.
I'm gonna step out and watch the Lord work what needs to be worked.
Right.
And He has been blowing my mind.
That's so great. That's so great.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about the services that the
Okay.
support that you've been able to put together, because that's a beautiful backstory, and I know that you're committed. I know that you're called in order to support people in this way. But I'm curious to know if you can elaborate on your work in pro-marital covenant
Okay.
coaching, how it kind of differs from the traditional marital counseling.
It is. I don't talk about the rights and wrong. I start off with asking, and it's usually the woman, what happened in or what is in your background? And most women go, what? I said, well, whatever you're doing today didn't just start last night. What is it that's in your family that has now shaped you? So we start talking about wife, her as a person, not just a role. And one of the things that stands out is oftentimes women who are in marital strife, it's hard for them to think that there is something in their background that is prohibiting them from having the union that they've always envisioned. They think it's the person, their spouse's actions, or their spouse's attitude, or the lack of money, or we have to move again, or whatever those external byproducts. I tend to get to the root. Now, I'm not a counselor, I'm a coach. But assist them to start seeing things in a different manner, and then creating or recreating systematic or systemic thinking, which means we're tying all of those various different components together to understand that one action that she does. And then understanding that action can then help her to start empathizing with her spouse. So that's one different way. I want to can't give away all of the secrets, but that is one particular way that stands out. And the fact that I am very much a pro-marital covenant coach. I do not introduce the word nor the concept of divorce.
Mhm.
I don't believe in it. So those of you who are in the faith community, if you are familiar with the word, there is a part in scripture in the Old Testament, in the book of Malachi, where it says God, God thinks of divorce as cruel and violent, because we weren't meant to be disconnected from one another. So why would you think he would want you to be disconnected from your spouse? And when you speak to people about divorce, whether they had a contentious one or seemingly smooth, streamlined, they will tell you it's still hard. It's still difficult. It is like severing a part of me. It is a death. It's violent and it's cruel.
Mhm.
So that those concepts don't come into my wordplay nor in my coaching at all.
Right, right. And that's powerful to have a strong foundation based on faith, based on, what you believe in, because there's a roadmap. There is, a sense of integrity behind what you do, taking that approach. Are there
Mhm.
any innovative methods that you use as an educator or public historian to engage and inspire your audience?
Sure. I Once I get talking about history, I love it. So, when I first get into the classroom, I call everybody my kids. I don't care if you're a non-traditional student, older than me or younger than me. I go, I love history. I love it. So my students love it when I just talk, and it feels like I'm telling a story rather than they having to read out of the textbook and then now try to synthesize the concepts and the people and the places and all of that. Um, when we start talking about history and then understanding the role of family, primarily the union, people get enthralled with it because they never think of it in the manner that I present it. And I just use historical facts, or I use a backdrop of a historical context. And it doesn't always have to be derivative out of slavery or Reconstruction era, those of you who are history buffs. Um, it's not always in 19th century. It can be from pre-colonial African society. It can be current day. It can be 20th century. So this idea of using my educational background to then try to make it where people understand the thing that you're reading in your textbook is really you. It's really part of your narrative. And when we don't look at it in that fashion, then we have a disruptor. Then we disassociate history from you. There is never a time when you can separate history from you. You are always building history. There is always history in your family. Whether you talk about your mama or your grandmama or however you want to call the elder seasoned person in your family, that's history. So when I can start bringing in those behaviors or those colloquiums that we hear or have heard growing up, and then start tying it into what's happening in your union, people's faces go, "Oh, I didn't think about it like that." Well, here you go.
Hmm.
Let me give you a new perspective. So, always bringing in the idea of my professional background, because it's also a passion point. I'll say that, a passion point. So yeah, definitely my training comes into play because
Hmm.
I'm a researcher. So now I'm going to start asking you genealogical stuff, and then it has people going, "Oh, I didn't think about her," and okay, and so oh yeah, I get knee deep
Yes.
into it.
Yes, indeed. Scrubbing up, no rock left unturned, huh?
Cannot, cannot.
Good back. Oh, that's solid. That's solid. My next question for you is, as somebody who's dedicated to facilitating growth, what are some of the key principles or practices that you might recommend for professional and personal development?
Well, the first one is this whole concept of giving back should be innate.
Hmm.
It should not be contrived. And if it is, then do it in stages. So I don't expect people to go out and say, everything that's in your car, you give away.
Hmm.
But when you have that little nudge, give it away. So, for instance, I was driving the other day and I saw a man cross the street. He looked very disturbed about something. And I watched him sit at the bus stop. And I remember what it's like to be at the bus stop. And it was hot. And I had an extra bottle of water. Sir, would you like some water? Oh, yes, ma'am. And I'm not saying this to toot my horn. I'm saying is things happen in stages if you're not just willing to give all of you all at the same time. The idea of giving back has to be paramount. The idea that I give and not expect anything in return, because what happens is when he received the water bottle, he's now being able to be hydrated. I smiled, he smiled, and then he was able to have something nutritious for himself. I walked away with my endorphins and all these other substances that are in our brains that is to move and circulate throughout our bodies to make our bodies feel good and then our organs function better. So I had a reward without him ever saying thank you.
Hmm.
That's the first two. Thirdly, it is you are creating what most people call a muscle memory. And I was just reading over this the other day. Scientists call it a subconscious memory.
Hmm.
You are creating a path in your brain that says it's good to do good.
Hmm.
And if I keep doing this, then that means I feel better. And then I'm making someone else be better, then I need to do this more often. So it's now creating a whole new path and an emotional DNA journey in your brain that will send all the synapses throughout your body that says, this is part of who you are. So now it also refines your character. So not everything is about you. So all of those different principles, I think I named four so far. So when we now move it into a more structured uh, version. So that means whatever your enterprise is, whether it's social impact, whether it's technology or whatever it is, it now has to have these principles in place as to what it's supposed to do, not just the major outcome. I want to earn $1 million, or I want to have 3 satellite campuses, or I want to have 500 employees. It has to go beyond that
Hmm.
because intrinsically, it has to serve a greater purpose than whatever physical product you can ever give someone.
Hmm. Yes, indeed. Drop the bomb. Talk, man, talk. That's for real, and I resonate because I've just noticed in myself that we say that the best way to success is to delay gratification, and I think that that's very true. But
Mhm.
as people, I know that I'm one. Maybe there's somebody else listening to this that enjoys instant gratification. I think that
Absolutely.
I've kind of hacked the system in the way that you just described, to where it doesn't take 10, 15, 20 years to get gratification from some of the good things that we do, like giving. You get those endorphins, you get those good feelings. That is a reward, that is a
Mhm.
gratification, right? And it happens
Mhm.
just like
Mhm.
that. Same thing when I go for a run in the morning. I might hate doing it. It might be an uphill battle in the beginning, but once it's
Mhm.
done, there's
Mhm.
no beating that feeling of confidence and achievement, to where I
Right.
think that if more people were aware that there's some less tangible rewards that you could be getting from the good that you want to do for yourself and in the world, that
Mhm.
it's not grind your fingers to the bone and live beneath your means all the time and go without and sacrifice for 20
Mhm.
years. Sometimes, cleaning the house is you get the reward of a clean
Right.
house,
Of
and
a
it's
clean house.
instant,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
know, so that's super super important. Hey, doctor, could you share with us any like success stories of somebody that you've coached, or you
Mhm.
met in the educational process, how you helped them, you significantly impacted their life?
So I have a recent experience, and it has nothing to do. Well, let me go back. So one of my clients under my for-profit, which is the coaching, the pro-marital covenant coaching, she came to me and she said, "I'm about to get a divorce." Okay, let's rewind this. So when I started speaking with her, and she's like, "Why aren't you addressing anything I'm telling you about my husband?" I said, "Because I'm not speaking to your husband. I'm speaking to you." So in the process, I gave her some tasks that she had to do,
Mhm.
and without any explanation, I just said, "I just need you to trust me." And I have a way, as people have said, to be very persuasive. I'm not going to even give away all of that, but I had her to do something for a month.
Mhm.
And in the process, I said, "It's going to be hard once you hit day 5, but then you call me and we'll walk it through." Sure enough, she called me. She said, "Dave, I don't want to do this anymore.
Mhm.
It's just getting really weird. I'm uncomfortable. My family's looking at me funny." By the end of our coaching time, her husband was calling me and saying, "I whatever you did, said to my wife, oh my goodness. Okay, can I talk to you?" Uh, she put on a little video so I could see her children's response to her. And the action was simple. The action was simply, whenever a family member passed her, she was to touch them: shoulder, top of the head, the elbow, but it was supposed to be some physical touch. And she would had to say to them, "I love you. I love you." That's it. Didn't go into any more uh, details. By the end of our time together, she said, "Oh my goodness, I passed one of my kids the other day, and they said, 'Wait a minute, what happened to my I love you and my touch?'"
Mhm.
And I just smiled. And then she called me at one point. She and the husband had gotten into it. She goes, "I'm at the courthouse right now." I said, "To do what? Take pictures?"
Mhm.
She's, "No, I'm I'm doing it this time. I mean it." Okay. So then what? What happens after you file it? You still have to go home.
Mhm.
You still have to say something. So what are we doing? And just talking her through whatever it was that was making her upset. And she finally said, "Oh, it's me,
Mhm.
ma'am. So who do you need to forgive first?"
Mhm.
And the power of talking about forgiveness changed her whole uh, perception.
Mhm.
She called me about an hour later. She goes, "I came home and I apologized to my husband." I said, "Because he didn't have a clue what you were about to do." She said, "No." And she goes, "And we just hugged." I said, "And you didn't say anything?" She said, "No,
Mhm.
just hugged." And then we cried and then we talked. I'm a firm believer of touch. I am a firm believer in there is strength in your vulnerability.
Mhm.
If you cannot be vulnerable with the person that you said you're going to live your life with,
Mhm.
then there's a problem. So I allow folks to start seeing these intangibles as a great reward and asset.
Mhm.
So that's one. The more recent, and it has nothing to do with my marital covenant coaching. I had a group of students over, and I always like to do this every so often. I did this when I taught at a black boarding high school, and
Mhm.
I had the kids come over, and I thought I was just going to, have them eat some chicken and pizza, regular college stuff, and
Mhm.
just chit chat with them. Uh, but what it culminated was a spoken word, and I anointed my kids. And for those of you that don't know what anointing is, it is simply the symbolic use of oil
Mhm.
to impart the aspect of what we call the Holy Spirit, for those in the faith community. So
Mhm.
what we did was I had each of the students stand next to me, and everybody around had to say a particular word that characterized or how they felt about that person. By the time the evening ended,
Mhm.
my young men were in tears and had given each other accolades. I had the two young ladies sit in the fact that they were emerging queens, and that's how the young men saw them.
Mhm.
At the end of the evening, now this was we started, they came over by 7:30. They didn't leave till 11:30. By the time they were getting ready to go, all of them, well, one young man said, "How is it that you knew to say what we needed to hear even before we even knew it?" And that just made the whole experience all the better, because I remember folks speaking to me in the worst of times or even the best of times, and they say things to me that I needed to hear at that time and never said anything to them. So, and I tell my kids, whomever I'm teaching, what you see is a composite of all the folks that have been laying in me. And when I had that experience, and this was just last week, we all just kind of looked at each other, and we formed a bond
Mhm.
that can never be severed, because now those young people said, "What is your number? I need you in my life. You're just my other ma." That's
Mhm.
fine. The same with the married couple. The husband started seeing the difference in his wife and said, "Well, whatever it is you did, you gave, I need it for
Mhm.
me." There is power in connecting with people.
Mhm.
And it has nothing to do with, I got a 15-minute consult coming up. It is truly speaking to the heart and the root of whatever it is, and just letting them be able to be vulnerable and deal with it. So those are that's an older experience and a more recent one.
Yes, indeed. And I resonate again. I mean, I think that you're definitely on the path. You definitely know what you're talking about. And you're definitely destined to change the world, change 8
Oh,
billion lives. I can see it as clear as day. I was reading this book, The Greatest Salesman. I think it's just called The Greatest Salesman, like ever. Or
mhm.
whatever. And they gave me one of those weird excitements too, right?
Okay.
You go from thinking that the other person needs to change or the other people need to change, the world needs to change for you to thrive and be happy. And then I started doing the assignment, and the assignment was, as you're walking down the street, every person you see, whether you say it out loud or to yourself, you just say, "I love you." Right?
Hmm.
And now I'm thinking that when I'm doing that, I do feel it changes. I feel the effect. And I'm thinking that, well, my perception of people is changing, which is a deeper understanding. But
Hmm.
what I'm getting, from you and just applying it and relating to it in my life is it's not just my perception that's changing, it's who I am that's changing. My cup of love is being
Hmm.
filled up. And it's so interesting how that happens, that you're gaining from giving.
Hmm.
Giving love
Hmm.
fills up your love cup, and then you're overflowing. It changes not what you see, not who they are, but who you are.
Hmm.
And I think
Hmm.
that's important to outline for anybody who feels struggled or feels like a victim of their circumstances. They say, change the way you see things, and soon the things you see will begin to change.
Right.
Is very powerful. But underneath that, it's happening because you yourself are
Right.
changing. That's really exciting. And I'm sure that on your journey, it hasn't just been a simple transition from
Oh,
living in survival to thriving to now helping so
right.
many people. So I want to ask you, what challenges have you faced in your journey to becoming a thought leader, and how have you overcome them?
I will say this. I said this in a testimony time at church, and this was a couple of weeks ago. And the person before me was just, "I've been delivered from crack cocaine for 25 years." Everybody goes, "Wow." And I was like, "Oh Lord, how do you follow that?" But then I started remembering why I was up there, and it was to talk about when you're tested before the testimony is done. And what was moving me to do that was I had decided to finish something that I had started several years ago when I was in the midst of marital strife.
Mhm.
Because I said, okay, again, going back to that question, what is in my hand? And I said, Lord, I don't know who is supposed to have this book, but I'm going to finish it. At least somebody will have it, and it will be something checked off. And I remember speaking to my uncle, he is 94, and he says, Nisi, what you doing with that book? You finish it? Yes,
Mhm.
sir, I finished it. He said, but what you doing with it? And I started thinking, I was like, I haven't done anything. And I was like, oh, I'm getting past the imposter syndrome before we even had given it a name back in the day. Because back in the day, and I shared this at the church, I said part of the test was for me to finally let go of the hurt when I was in graduate school, and several of my committee members said, "You can't write." And I
Mhm.
said to the congregation, I don't know how many of you have ever had a panel of people to review every word, every punctuation mark, everything, and say, this is trash, this is trash, this is trash. So when God is saying, finish the book, I was like, you remember what I
Mhm.
went through in graduate school? You remember what happened in my doctoral stuff? What are you talking about? And I remember sending things out and people, not sending anything back. And then having a more recent experience, a very well known editor, she blasted my stuff. And for a moment, I wallowed. And then I said, okay, let me rethink this. Let me pray about this. I need her to change her attitude towards me because you being nasty is not helping me. That
Mhm.
was one. And then I said, let's see if she has merit in what she's saying. So I started reading over the stuff that she had received. And I said, yeah, you could have written this better. So I said, okay, we're learning and we're growing, we're healing. Good. And then eventually I realized she was the wrong person to do a particular task.
Mhm.
And I had started editing my stuff. Then the Lord said, there's always going to be a ram in a bush. So because she didn't understand what you were writing, let's find someone that will. Here it is. Someone in my congregation has a degree in English. I said, oh. I
Mhm.
asked her, I said, would you be willing just to look it over? And from there, she did an X amount of pages, which means she didn't have to do the whole thing because I now am in a healed space where I can go, okay, I see where I did this wrong, da 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 da. And then using technology, finished editing the book. And I sat there and I said, you did it. You did it. Okay. And so now I can say, I finished that. And the Lord says, but you have three others you need to finish. I was like, well,
Mhm.
can I celebrate this one? He's yeah. Celebrate. Woohoo. Let's get back because it's still what's in your hand. So it is the opportunity and taking the opportunity of wanting to heal
Mhm.
and realizing that experience from the years ago still was hindering me from doing something that I know I'm supposed to do. And then I started being reminded of how people in my church who I would send poems to, and they would go, oh, girl, you're a writer.
Mhm.
And I'm listening to the publisher talk about, you are talented. What? At what? Writing.
Mhm.
So it is the mindset of wanting to be healed and then doing something behind it. It's
Mhm.
not enough to say I'm healed and then you never do any work with it.
Mhm.
Part of my work was I had to finish editing the book. And when I did, I was like, well, this was pretty good. How about that? Kind of
Yes.
deal. But it's in steps with me, but the main thing I want to relay to people is don't wallow and sit in what it is, because one of my prayers has been I need I need to have a countenance that is like this no matter what is happening.
Mhm.
So if I have a high day today and then it gets low, I still need to be. So I'm
Mhm.
getting there. So when that book editor fired away for a hot minute, I was like, oh, I'm not going to finish this. I'm not, Girl, you don't know what you're talking about. All right, let me go on finish. So it's really that constant movement and idea that I have to be healed in order to do what I've been groomed and found, and then my foundation has been cemented in me to do.
Hmm.
So
I just want to celebrate you real quick because you're doing your thing. Golly. Yes, indeed. Good juju coming through the screen
thank
across
you,
the
thank you.
country.
Trying to.
Yes, indeed. So I know that there's somebody right now that is completely enamored and inspired by your story and absolutely needs your support. What do we say to them? What is the next step? How do they get a little bit closer to you and learn how to get that
Sure.
support they need from you?
They can email me and my email address, or they can go to my website. So I'll give you both. The
Mhm.
email address is hello at faith in the letter N movement.com. Again, the email is hello at faith in the letter N movement.com. The website is www.faithinmovement.com. So either or, come on to the website, sign up, or you can email me. And then we can go from there as far as connecting with a live consult. I don't believe in doing things, completely automated. I like to be able to talk with people and see how they move and say things, so that better tells me how to then approach them. So it's not a one size fits all. It's very customizable
Right.
depending on the person that I'm interacting with.
Yeah, as you should. As you should. I think that's the ideal. That's what everybody needs.
Mhm.
And if I can talk to that person that is inspired to move forward and to get closer to you, doctor, um, I want to invite you to not hesitate. If
Mhm.
this is for you, go ahead. We're gonna make the email address available down below, up above,
Okay.
left or the right, depending on where you're watching this at. But
Sure.
do find the email address, do find the website. Don't hesitate, jump on over. Let's get connected. I'm so grateful for you
Oh,
spending
thank
time with
you.
us today. I have one more question for you,
Sure.
and that question is uh, uh, a call to action, right?
Okay.
In addition to going ahead on the website and sending you an email,
Right.
what is one thing anybody listening right now can do to live a little bit more by design instead of by
hmm
default?
Well, here's the interesting thing. The book is in pre-order, so you can go on the website and go to the link at pay.faithinmovement.com and pre-order the book Battle or Bread, There is a Treasure in You, that starts giving some very practical, livable tips. So what this book started out as, it was supposed to be a practical living manual, quote unquote. And at the time, it kind of shifted. So it not only does the practical, livable manual aspect, it then now starts getting into some introspective look as to bits and pieces of my life and how those areas are transformed and are being transformed. So you're never out there by yourself, and you want to have some rudiment things in place where you can go, okay, in order to do this, I need to do A, I need to do B. The first part of the book helps you to do that. The second part of the book walks you through some of my lived experiences and how they have shaped and have changed my perspective and now my reality. And then, of course, the latter part of the book talks a little bit about this new journey as a widow unexpectedly. And
Mhm.
then it also says how you can get in touch with me or how I can be of service to you, whether it's through a seminar, a workshop, a conference, a speaking engagement, one-on-one coaching, group coaching. And we're starting a new initiative, and we're needing support for this new initiative. And it is to really help displaced married women. And when you get in touch with me, because I'm not giving it all away, when you get in touch with me, I can then relay all of that information to you. So you can buy the book, well, pre order the book, And when it is published, it will be sent to you. So you can go to the link of pay.faithinmovement.com to pre-order the book, Battle or Bread. There is a treasure in you. That's the other way to get in touch with me. And because the back of the book says all these different things, again, one-on-one coaching, group coaching, so on and so forth. So I'm here.
Yes, indeed. Again, do not hesitate. Grab that book. We're super excited. You're definitely a life changer. And I'm so grateful that we got to spend this time together.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you so much. This is a blessing. Thank you.
oh, yes, it's the first of many to come.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and to everybody listening at home, as always, love, be well, and don't forget to have the guts to follow your guts. Peace.
Yes.